Welcome to all our panelists and participants. We will now begin with session 3, which is on Agenda 2063 and taking stock of India-Africa Development Partnership. The session will be chaired by Professor Sachin Chaturvedi. He is the Director General, Research and Information System for Developing Societies, New Delhi. The first speaker of the session is Ambassador Akhilesh Mishra, Additional Secretary, Development Partnership Administration, Ministry of External Affairs, India. The next speaker of the session is Her Excellency Jacqueline Mukangira. She is the High Commissioner of Rwanda to India. The last speaker of the session is Dr. Prosper Honest Ngoe. He is the Professor of Economics from the Mazumbe University, Dar-es-Salam, Tanzania. Before we begin with the proceedings, let me remind the few customary housekeeping rules. The participants can ask questions by logging into the chat box at the bottom of the page. Click on the guest option, type your name, accept the terms and conditions, and join the discussion. The chair will take the questions for discussion. With this, I would like to hand over the proceedings to Professor Sachin Chaturvedi. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for both the guidelines and also for helping us know each other. And I think this would take us forward. I warmly welcome all our panelists and, of course, those who are still logged in for so many hours and relatively late hour in India. I think the contours are well set with the great inaugural that we had today and then the subsequent panel discussions. The Secretary Economic Relations, Rahul Chabra, gave some very interesting remarks in terms of how the dimensions of development are important. And from that point of view, the idea of localizing development. And I think from that point of view, this session gets directly linked, as we heard our great friends from Africa talking about the Agenda 2063 and Secretary Economic Relations was very clear that this gels well with the development partnership and with the idea of taking it forward in terms of our collective partnership. So the idea of 2063 that evolved as we see very well in terms of identifying the priorities and also identifying how localization can help countries set in their own development perspective. So India has been talking about this for long in terms of localization of sustainable development goals. And the idea of what Prime Minister Modi has been talking about in terms of bringing everyone along for collective development is nothing but what we talk of at the UN platform on leaving no one behind when we talk about sustainable development goals. So this is, I think, extremely interesting, mutually supporting, and brings in the larger canvas of re-exploring developments. In fact, the other day I was reminded of a Colombian economist, Professor Arturo, who once said that the time has come not to look for alternative development strategies, but to look at alternatives to development. And when you read the philosophy and the idea, you get an impression that they have been talking about how the concept and the approach of development has been hijacked by the Western thinkers and Western parameters on which development has to come in. So it is very much colonial in its approach, and the post-development debates that have unfolded in last few years, I think, are emphasizing in terms of what kind of development strategies or post-development strategies that we require. And I'm sure from that point of view, this session would be very, very interesting. Here we have our first speaker, respected Akhilesh Mishraji, who has been talking in terms of not only a plurality of approaches, but he has been a very, very strong supporter of picking up several languages and and plurality of tongues, plurality of localizing your ideas and approaches through local languages has been his strength. And as a diplomat, as a thinker, and as a practitioner, he has provided this new dimension to India's development partnership and engagement. And if any one of you are following him on his Twitter, the amount of versatility that he has brought into the Development Partnership Administration is simply amazing. I'm in awe in terms of this huge new connect that DPA has established. So, congratulations, Ambassador Mishra, for that. I would now request you, and after may you sort of share your ideas, we would open the floor because I'm told that he would have to leave early. So we would take a few questions for him and then we would continue the discussion. Mishraji, you have the floor now. I think you are on
He's
mute.
muted. He's muted.
You are on
you
mute.
have to
Yeah.
unmute yourself, so you are on mute.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, friends. Let me begin by expressing my ways to this very important conference. Friends, as this panel has so many, everyone who is connected with this panel is deeply engaged with Africa. Therefore, I don't need to talk about our genuinely very special relationship with African people based on prehistoric ties and our parallel movements for independence and cultural affinity, the very large diaspora connect, and also trade, investment, and other ties. And in terms of development partnership, in fact, the of Africa and the lessons that Mahatma Gandhi learned while he was in South Africa, and then the ideas that he developed into our freedom struggle movement, and also in independent India, the kind of inspiration and that foundational values which set up the architect of so-called South-South cooperation. the diversity of Africa is something very, very stunning for anyone. It's more or less diverse like India in terms of the religions, in terms of ethnicities, in terms of languages, in terms of biodiversity, in terms of agroclimatic regions and flora and fauna, and also the demography. Both India and Africa have a very young population, 100 million people in the age group of 15 to 24 years, and creation of development Africa face in terms of maritime security, piracy, terrorism, drug trafficking, cybercrime. So there is a whole entire spectrum of areas in which the experience of Africa and we are monitoring the situation quite closely, and we are quite concerned that face very major brunt of corona pandemic. According to African Development Bank estimate, the COVID cost to Africa is going to be around 136 to 190 billion dollar loss in GDP. And also the debt stress is again going to become a challenge for many African countries. They are already spending more on debt servicing than on healthcare. And it is when the actual debt of Africa is only 2% of all FDI flows into Africa. And therefore there is an issue of nature of the debt that Africa has accumulated. Similarly, there is a acute dependency of Africa in terms of on raw materials exports for their economy, and Africa loses about 20% of its GDP and its growth rate because of exporting raw materials with minimal value addition. And therefore, in the context of Corona crisis, it is even more important for us to think about how do we enhance the value of the raw materials which Africa exports, even agriculture products or minerals. The value addition of local produce of Africa is going to be a big priority for the international community. Similarly, the financing gap for African friends is estimated around $200 billion to $1.3 trillion. And the gap is going to become even more acute, particularly the infrastructure financing, and also the massive blow to their economy because of disruption in supply chain and the reduction in demand of their raw materials and the decline in prices of the commodities that Africa exports to the rest of the world. So therefore, it is very clear for someone who is engaged in policy planning of the development partnership and funding of developmental projects. It is very clear that the financing gap cannot be met solely through the government revenues of the partner countries, nor by the development assistance coming from outside through the government to government mode. And therefore, there is a critical need for a concerted, multi-pronged effort to leverage the global private sector resources, private sector capital. And also, friends, the challenge is not just of the money, the availability of financing, but a bigger challenge, I think, is having a bouquet of identified bankable, feasible revenue generating projects. And therefore, friends, I think I would submit 4 or 5 points for consideration of friends, as we see, as I see, engaged in India's development partnership. First is that while traditionally the government of India has been engaging on G2G relationship in delivering developmental assistance and development partnership programs, I think time has come to strengthen the G2B track in parallel to G2G. Secondly, there has to be a concerted effort to mobilize private sector participation in development projects. And for that, I think Dr. Chaturvedi and I have been brainstorming about the different kind of modalities we have for attracting private equity through PPP model, through counter trade, and also the co-financing mechanisms with other partners like African Development Bank or JPIC or other multilateral agencies. Similarly, co-lending or co-guarantees of projects. Similarly, in order to identify bankable, feasible, practical, doable projects, there is need for granular feasibility study and a granular, very detailed, meticulous economic viability assessment of projects, environmental assessment of projects. I think there has to be a collective effort to how to add value to the projects before they are placed before potential investors. And the government can't really pay, governments can collectively play a role. Similarly, there has to be some innovative mechanism to cover political and regulatory risks and cover risk and find kind of innovative guarantees to mitigate the risk of the private capital. Also, we have to explore possibility of non-sovereign credits because many African friends are already heavily debt stressed, and therefore getting sovereign guarantee for the loans that Exim Bank or other banks offer is going to be challenging. Lastly, I think given the severity of the crisis and also scarcity of resources, the critical need of stimulating the economic recovery, we have to, I think, have a two-track approach. One is for the longer gestation projects, but more importantly for the short-term relief, we have to focus on very high impact generating and quick impact generating short gestation projects which are very high in creating jobs and creating revenue. And I'm told per unit of investment, it is the micro, small and medium, micro and small scale industries which create maximum number of employment. I think this is a good area we have not looked at from Government of India side. If we can look at smaller projects which are very high in creating local revenue and also creating local jobs. We are very happy that African Development Bank has launched a special scheme for private sector credit enhancement facility, and also they have taken initiative to launch Africa Investment Forum regularly, which helps to identify bankable projects. I sincerely look forward to engaging Africa Development Bank closely and seeing how we can join hands. Lastly, friends, I would submit that the times are very challenging for us, but there is no need to be despondent. There is always scope for optimism, and as Honorable Prime Minister Modi has shown through his decisive leadership that we can, with concerted efforts and with wise planning, we can convert crisis into opportunities. And we are within India going through a very major transformational mission of Atmanirbhar Bharat to create India as a self-reliant country. And many of the schemes, whether they are for boosting domestic capacities in healthcare, promotion of Ayurveda and yoga and traditional systems of medicine, or digital solutions in healthcare and teleeducation. All of these, and also impetus to the micro and small scale industries. I think many of the processes that government of India is implementing, I guess, will have relevance to our friends and partners in Africa. We in DPA will be very happy to get your ideas on how do we leverage those experiences and those processes. If there is any solution which is of relevance and interest to our African friends, I'm sure the government of India would be forthcoming. Similarly, friends, during the crisis, during the corona pandemic, we have tried our best to continue to share our experiences. We have organized more than 20 capacity building programs to share our corona-related experience with about 1,200 foreign delegates. We have also been always forthcoming to provide any medical assistance or deployment of medical experts to countries in even this critical period, and applied pharmaceutical products and medical devices to more than 150 countries. Currently, we are working on making sure that vaccine, whenever it's available, it is accessible and it's also affordable to people, particularly who are underprivileged. We really look forward to engaging and having more intense, more close, sustained dialogue, both with our development partners in the South as well as other developed country partners. I think we all would need more granular feedback from our African friends and brothers, because they can guide us what will be most beneficial to them. Also, traditionally, we have had bilateral track of cooperation. We are increasingly open to more innovative and triangular relationship, and also different kind of modalities to deliver most effectively. We can assure you that India will always be ready to contribute and support and share our experience to African friends in whatever manner we can. And as Prime Minister Modi has been telling, Atmanirbhar Bharat, self-reliant India is not going to be a self-centric or selfish India, because that is not the Indian ethos. We always have believed in world as a family, and India will always be a robust, reliable friend and partner to our African friends and brothers and sisters. Thank you so much, and I look forward to keeping in touch.
Again, India-Africa Development Fund of 400 million that we have initiated. What are the plans and proposals? And you just mentioned about the feedback that we need from African side. And one of the aspects that we have, highlighted in our India-Africa Forum Summit is the monitoring and evaluation, both sides. How much we have moved forward in that in terms of a joint initiative? Professor Chaturvedi is back. Thank you.
Dr. Navita ji, But as far as healthcare is concerned, we are engaged in Africa in multiple ways. In some cases, we have hospitals or and support to hospitals, constructing hospitals and clinics, those things. Then we have at the government to government level, we have had, you must remember, Pan African E-Network. So that had a very robust component of telemedicine. And in the revamped Pan-African E-Network, which is called E-Arogya Bharati, it has two components. One is focusing on tele-education, other is focusing on telemedicine. And in the telemedicine side, we have two components. One is continuing medical education, and then the second is teleconsultancy. So that is the main area of engagement so far, as far as government to government is concerned. And also during the corona pandemic, we have supplied pharmaceutical items and other medical items to about 150 countries, and there are very many in Africa which have received supplies from India, despite our own tremendous requirement and huge uncertainty about the growth of corona pandemic. And also in terms of the capacity building and education and healthcare. So, as a student myself, I know that education is an ocean. It's a very, very vast area. Healthcare is again a very vast area. The kind of the request from African friends is that what was being done in the name of assistance in education or healthcare 20 years, 30 years, 40 years ago may not be very relevant today. In terms of capacity building, African society is transforming as rapidly as a society in India. Therefore, we need a more granular live assessment of what are the contemporary areas of priority for African friends, their societies, their countries, particularly the vocational education. It has to be updated. The vocational education, vocational training centers or IT centers which were relevant 30 years ago or 20 years ago, they are absolutely not relevant. Africa has some very bright, very talented, capable youth. 200 million young people. They are very aspirational. They are very creative. They are very tech savvy. And therefore, I'm personally looking at thoroughly revamping our iTech program to make it more relevant to our African partners. And also, the youth of today will not go to those areas of vocational training which we imparted 20 years ago. So we have to provide capacity building to young girls and boys of Africa in areas which they like, areas which give them kind of intellectual and professional satisfaction. And also they have to be futuristic. They must be able to contribute more effectively in the society in the years to come. We are past our prime, but the youth we are targeting, they have their life ahead. So we must give them the skills which they need in the next 10 years. Similarly, not in terms of what happened. What happened, it is past. I'm more focused on finding more relevant, more valuable, cost-effective, and more beneficial projects for the future.
Thanks, Ambassador Mishra. Thanks, Dr. Nivedita, for stepping in. It was really a great sort of expose in terms of how India's own development experience is now going to be imbibed in India's development partnership frameworks. And as you rightly said, iTech would be revamped in light of our own startup culture and other initiatives that we have launched. You also reflected on the need for revitalizing the lines of credit program, the G2G to G2B, and you also very rightly emphasized in terms of how we bring in granularity in these partnerships, as Prime Minister has been emphasizing on timely completion of Indian projects, and we bring in predictability and accountability at the same time. And as External Affairs Minister himself said, that the delay in development projects is a thing of past, and we want to be on time in delivery in all the projects. So thanks a lot, Ambassador Mishra, for joining us and giving in this important address today. If there are no further questions, may I now switch over to the next speaker? I don't see any. So thanks, Mishraji. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you.
Let me now bring in Madame Excellency, the High Commissioner of Rwanda to India, Her Excellency, Madame Jacqueline Mukangira, for her address. Madame, you have the floor.
Thank you so much for the floor and for having me today. Excellency Ambassador Akhilesh Mishra, Additional Secretary, Development Partnership Administration, Minister of External Affairs of India, Professor Sachin, Chaturvedi, Director General Research and Information System for Developing Societies, India, Dr. Professor Honest Ngowi, Professor of Economics, Mzumbe University, Dar-es-Salam, Tanzania, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. On behalf of the government of Rwanda and the High Commission of Rwanda in New Delhi, I bring you greetings from Rwanda, the land of 1,000 hills. I take the opportunity to thank the Indian Council of World Affairs for organizing this noble event and for giving Rwanda the opportunity to participate and speak about the overarching theme of India and Africa looking ahead, contemporary realities and emerging prospects. I would like to also congratulate all speakers who addressed this important meeting today with so brilliant presentations. On a special note, I would like to thank Ambassador Akhilesh Mishra for his kind and warm words about Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no doubt COVID-19 pandemic has impacted life in all aspects, economically, socially, and politically, but still there is big will to keep things moving, and so virtual events like this testify to that. Nevertheless, with greater milestones and breakthroughs made by researchers in medical sector, there is greater optimism that the world will soon emerge victorious against the COVID-19 pandemic. With the silver lining now visible in a not far distance, and with noticeable economic resurgence in some parts of the world, and business beginning to take shape, there is reason to hope for a better future. Ladies and gentlemen, relations between India and Africa have been very good, even during the pandemic. India's interventions in seeking a solution to the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly in endeavoring to get the vaccine, as well as helping other countries, especially in Africa, to face the pandemic is evident. In Rwanda particularly, bilateral engagements at the highest levels was a greater sign of solidarity, even in tough times. India-Africa Forum Summit has been the most appropriate platform for charting the way and to drive the relationship between India and African countries and bring it even to greater heights. IAFS 3 held in New Delhi in October 2015, bringing together 41 African heads of state and government, as well as representatives from other countries to India, was indeed a historic milestone, a transformational moment in the centuries-old fraternal relations between India and Africa. The resolutions and outcomes of this impeccable gathering gave a clear orientation on what India and African countries should focus on to address common challenges and lead the blocs towards a huge socio-economic transformation. The areas of cooperation put forward by the IAFS 3, that is, economic cooperation, cooperation in trade and industry, agriculture, renewable energy, blue economy, infrastructure, education, and capacity building, health, peace and security, and other forms of cooperation remain very important and relevant for all parties concerned. I'm confident that ICWA is organizing this conference in this framework, especially to promote a sustained dialogue between India and Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, IAFS 3 resolutions resonate well with the Africa Agenda 2063, Africa We Want, which is Africa's blueprint and a must plan for transforming Africa into the global powerhouse of the future. The goals and aspirations stated in the Africa Agenda 2063 cover all the sectors of cooperation suggested in the IAFS, hence a clear indication of harmony of minds of both blocs, India and Africa. Taking stock of India-Africa Development Partnership, India-Africa bilateral trade stood at 63 billion USD in 2018, increasing from 7.2 billion USD, making India one of the largest trading partners of Africa, accounting for almost 8% of the total African trade. Nevertheless, trade is largely composed of export of finished goods to Africa and importation of raw materials from Africa. However, recent developments have seen investments by Indian companies in different sectors such as pharmaceuticals, IT, telecommunications, and agriculture. Ladies and gentlemen, talking about Rwanda in particular, bilateral cooperation with India is at a strategic level partnership and cuts across a wide range of sectors, including defense and security, health and education, trade and investments, and many others. Today, trade and investments constitute the main pillar of our economic cooperation. Rwanda Development Board has so far registered over 120 companies, especially SMEs, that have invested over 500 million USD. Rwanda is open again, and we are inviting you to visit for tourism, business, and other activities. Rwanda's visa regime remains of the most open one for all the world citizens. For business people, I'm glad to inform you that the administrative requirements for investors are easy compared to neighboring countries. Ranked one of the fastest growing economies on the continent, with lowest debt ratio in the region and B+ stable economy, Rwanda remains one of the easiest countries for one to do business in safety and security. Rwanda embraces investors in all sectors, including manufacturing, agriculture, and agro-processing, education, health, finance, IT, and BPOs. Rwanda's strategic geographic location connecting East and Central Africa makes it ideal for business, especially transacting in both French and English. Rwanda's membership to regional economic blocs such as the East African Community, the Economic Community for Central African States, the Common Market for East and Central Africa, and the upcoming Continental Free Trade Area offers a huge market opportunity to Indian investors. The IT readiness in Rwanda has been an enabling factor for fast services in the country and in the region. Rwanda's past achievements with respect to ease of doing business have been driven by the focus on creating an enabling investment environment, offering business-friendly regulation, an efficient supported process, commitment to foreign ownership, and multiple incentives for exporters and priority sectors. Ladies and gentlemen, India's duty-free tariffs preference scheme for least developed countries and the strengthening cooperation between Exim Bank of India have given a big boost to the bilateral trade between India and African countries. Also, there is no doubt that India's decision under IAFS to provide training to 50,000 African workforce has played an important role in capacity building, especially in the area of technology and other areas requiring skills. India's intervention in the area of human resource development, especially through the high-tech and other training programs provided by the government of India, has added a great deal to the skilled manpower in different African countries. There is no doubt India has abundant domestic experience upon which many African countries build on to boost their manufacturing and service sectors in a bid to improve their socio-economic development by replicating the Indian model. Ladies and gentlemen, as clearly stated in the Africa Agenda 2063, infrastructure development remains one of the top priorities for Africa, and indeed this has had and still has huge prospects for partnership between India and Africa. Rwanda has been a beneficiary of the lines of credit provided by the Indian Exim Bank, and to date the total portfolio is over 500 million USD for different infrastructure projects in agriculture, energy, industrial parks, and training institutions. Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, allow me to highlight that Rwanda cherishes the cooperation with India and also commits to support all the efforts for India-Africa cooperation. Rwanda looks forward to the 4th IAFS and will spare no effort to ensure that it is successful. Let me also reiterate my invitation to Indian investors to Africa and to Rwanda in particular to explore business and investment opportunities, but also to position themselves to strategically benefit from the forthcoming Africa Free Trade Agreement that will create one of the biggest markets in the world. I assure you that in Rwanda, you will receive necessary support and facilitation. I'm confident that this platform will provide a good takeaway for Rwanda and Africa in general. I wish you fruitful deliberations. Thank you very much for the kind attention. Dhanyavad.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Madam Excellency, for this very substantive observations, and thanks for your greetings from Land of Thousand Hills. You very rightly captured the idea of agriculture, industry, and the new investment opportunities. So congratulations for very substantive, very interesting remarks. I'm very glad that you mentioned about the ideas that are going to be relevant for the fourth IAFS, and you very rightly emphasized in terms of what Ambassador Mishra very rightly said, that times are stressful, but there is no place for despondency, and you very rightly said that silver lining is visible. So I see a common message by two of our diplomats on why we need pragmatism and why we need hope to sustain our endeavors and our efforts and bring in success to all of us. But let me now turn to our academic friend, and I think academics are known to bring in realism to these exercises and deliberations, as in a very passing manner, Nivedita brought out this question of impact assessment and evaluation. So I think it would be interesting to see how we bring in realism. But thanks a lot, Madam Excellency, for very, very substantive, very interesting remarks. I would now request, since we are running out of time, let me now request Dr. Prosper Honest Nogoi from Tanzania, Professor of Economics in Zombe University in Dar-es-Salam. Professor, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. I will make my presentation, and I think I'm trying to show the screens. I'm not sure if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can
see
it
my
now.
Screen?
We can see it now. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, it's coming up.
Yes, I'm yet to see my PowerPoint. Okay, did you see the PowerPoint now?
It is there.
Thank
now.
you.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So I will be a little bit, because the background has been set, and my talk is on Agenda 2063 and taking stock of Indo-Africa Development Partnership, where now really, as we know, and it has been said earlier, the relationship between Africa and India really is historical. And I will be talking in the context of economics and business, because this is really my area. And relationship have been taking place in terms of trade, but also investment. And we have seen also a relationship in terms of aid, in technology, in culture, politics, military, diplomacy, you name it, really in quite a lot of areas. And fortunately, the base has been a win-win relationship between these partners, essentially. There might have been areas for improvement, but at least the spirit has been win-win between these parts. And of course, we have seen relationships which are three-tiered in terms of bilateral relationship, regional, but also Pan-African cooperation. And it is very important, Chair, to insist that going forward, we look more towards Africa-owned and Africa-led development in this context here, where, of course, there's principles of equality, equal partnership between these two parts are very, very important. We understand really the efforts that have been taken towards that, and really this is very, very essential for a healthy relationship between India and the African context. So, a little bit about Agenda 2063. Her Excellency Ambassador has spoken about it a little bit, and I won't use a lot of time because it's a huge document, but really, this is all about a strategic framework for socio-economic transformation in the continent for the next 50 years. So really, social and economic transformation of the continent to improve the economies of Africa, but also social conditions in Africa for a period of 50 years. It's a rather long-term really thinking. And it's all about accelerating continental initiatives of growth and sustainable development. And here we are talking about economic growth, which is really what I call a desired growth. Growth that is jobs creating, growth that is poverty reducing, growth that is equitable, but also growth that is green in terms of environment. That's where the concept of a sustainable development comes in, where we develop, yes, but taking into account that we have to take care of the terrestrial and aquatic flora and fauna, plants and animals of the world. That is very, very important. And we have a vision, a guiding vision for 2063, Africa 2063 agenda is to have integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, driven by its own citizens and representing a dynamic force in the international arena. Now, our wish is our cooperation between Africa and India leads into exactly these things, into economic transformation, social transformation, growth that we desire, but also a sustainable development share. And Madam Ambassador mentioned again, there are aspirations in the Africa 2063 agenda, and there are 7 main aspirations. Having prosperous Africa, including economic growth and sustainable development, but also having integrated Africa that is integrated and politically united under Pan-Africanism and the vision of Africa Renaissance. It is Africa that desires to have good governance, democracy, respect of human rights, justice, and the rule of law. For sure, those are part of issues that Africa, some parts of Africa really can learn a lot from India, given what India is and its lead in some of these areas. Good governance, democracy, and I think India is one of the largest democracies in the world. Those are part of issues. Africa really has a lot to learn. Issues of peaceful and secure Africa, and we understand that India has been collaborating in a lot of peace missions across the world, and of course we are sure that it can contribute into contributing into Africa's peace, but also issues of strong cultural identity, common heritage, values and ethics, and development, which is again people driven. So, Chair, the wish again of Africa is to have a strong, united, resilient, and influential global player and a global partner. So really, when Africa becomes part and parcel of India's collaboration, it can achieve these aspirations, because partly India has been ahead of Africa in most of these issues. And of course, this partnership then is expected to lead exactly into this. And now, in order to achieve Africa Vision 2063, African leaders have come up with some flagship projects, some of which, when I'm looking at them, really present a lot of opportunities to India's captains and titans of the industry, to Indian private sector, to Indian industry, but also to Indian government, actually. These are part of projects and flagship projects where India can participate directly or indirectly. For example, we are talking about integrated high-speed trains, and we are talking about the train chains, for sure, within Africa. And this is all about infrastructure development, an area where India is very strong at. Issues of visual and e-university. Yes, we have a lot of universities in Africa, but really most of them, including mine, Mzumbe University, we are still traditional universities actually. Partly, we are yet to be so much a full-fledged e-university. We still embrace brick and mortar universities, partly due to resources, partly due to network, to connection. Knowing the strength of India, for example, when it comes to technology, when it comes to internet, those kind of stuff, really, this is an area where Africa can benefit a lot in various ways, collaborations, exchanges, etc., etc. And my own university, actually, Mzumbe University, aspires really to learn a lot from India in this context again. But also some other projects involved around the African commodity strategy. We understand that Africa is by and large a commodity exporter. It exports a lot of commodities, but of course, unfortunately, these commodities have been exported raw. From timber, coffee, sisal, even and minerals of all kinds, really they have been exported, but unfortunately they're exported there in raw form, without so much a domestic value addition, a domestic processing. Now, it will be high agenda here for Indian captains and titans of industry, Indian investors, Indian private sector to come and invest in Africa for value addition in these commodities. We are also talking about a continental free trade area. Her Excellency Ambassador has talked about it, where the point is to trade actually, to transact. We say from sea to sea, that is from Cairo to Cape Town, that is from North Africa to South Africa, having really borderless continent, which of course makes a movement of trade, movement of people very easy, and this is very essential for trade between Africa and India. But also issues of free movement, as I've said here. We have also issues of construction of dams, but also Pan-Africa e-network, electronic networks, but also the issue of silencing the guns. This is all about peace, about really kind of reducing and even putting to end violence in Africa. That's very important. Issues of Africa outer space, where we are sure that India is really ahead, and Africa really can learn a lot in here. We are also, part of the projects include what we call a continental financial institutions. We know how strong India is, for example, in some financial institutions. For example, if you talk about, Export-Import Bank, where really it has also its presence in Africa, and it's very important. So I see, Chair, all those flagship projects to be bringing a lot of opportunities in Indo-Africa collaborations, investment and trade, so that they contribute now into the socio-economic transformation that Africa desires. These are really tangible projects that can move us there. Let me look a little bit about India-Africa trade. As it was said earlier, India and Africa have really long-standing relationship in terms of trade. We are connected by the Indian Ocean, especially this eastern part of Africa, where Tanzania also belongs. And of course, the trade has been booming for almost over 1,000% from the years that I'm showing here, from 2001 to 2018. Really, it's a huge development in these areas, and I'm sure given now e-commerce, given science and technology that we are seeing today, I'm sure this trade has improved a lot. And of course, with all these regional trading blocks, East African Community, where Tanzania is, SADC, African Continental Free Trade Area, really trade is increasing. But let's be a little bit critical, and this is what academia is all about. At whose favor is this trade? I think if you were to break down, because I've written a paper on India-Tanzanian trade, where really at the end of the day, we found really this trade was in favor of India than in Tanzania. And this is because, of course, Tanzania, which of course is also the case for most of African countries, mainly export raw materials without value addition. A cashew nut, for example, a sisal, cotton, all those. So it would be more beneficial if there was more value addition domestically in Africa. And of course, there are a lot of conditions for that. Issues of investment climate, issues of skills and talent, which Indian companies really can come and invest in Africa. But also, the other things here, Africa really has a lot of positive economic outlook. Madam Ambassador has talked about Rwanda. I could talk about the same in Tanzania, where there are a lot of really opportunities for captains and charters of industry from India to invest. I will not bother you with all these examples, but I know the government of India has had a lot of initiatives really to strengthen Indo-Africa relationships, including this conference here, this online conference. I'm taking it as one of those examples. But from 2008, for example, we had Exim Bank having some programs that would enhance trade with African countries. We have seen India-Africa Forum, a summit from 2008, where Indian government, which is Indian government process of structured engagement with African countries. This is very important, but also issues of policies like a duty-free tariff, preferences, etc., etc. But also the annual India-Africa Trade Ministers Dialogue, launched it from 2011, to discuss various bilateral trade issues. Chair, all those really are very important in cementing, in signaling the seriousness of government in India in collaboration with Africa. You know, for example, India also hosted the annual meeting of the African Development Bank, ADB, which again is very instrumental in African development. Coming to the end, Chair, we have to recognize that the private sector, that is the industry, has also been doing quite a lot of efforts and initiatives to cement this relationship between Africa and India. In issues of Confederation of Indian Industries, we had at least 14 India-Africa projects, which provided, of course, platform for business and for business leaders to discuss. And increasing this mood for let's go to Africa, you know, Chalo Africa. I might not pronounce it well, but at least there is this spirit of India going to Africa, Chalo Africa. But also Africa itself has been looking east over time, including looking at India when it comes to trade, when it comes to investment, when it comes to technology, when it comes also really to aid. It used to look west, but really we have seen it looking east continuously. Tanzania is one of those. We had Zimbabwe and so many other countries that have been looking towards India. But also a federation of Indian chambers of commerce and industry, I understand, have been promoting trade with Africa through the Namaskar series of business conferences. Those are very important. Last one, Chair, is the concluding remarks. I would say, and this has been said earlier, there is a need now to evaluate really the impact of and relevance of all these interventions. You know, have these really moved us towards reaching Africa 2063 goals? Of course, we still have years, but really we have to make a lot of reflections as we are making it here now. We have to ask ourselves, is Africa in the relationship contributing Africa's socio-economic transformation, and to what extent? Are we seeing the growth that we want? Green growth, green that creates jobs, green growth that reduces poverty. Yeah, growth that is inclusive. Are we seeing sustainable development? We might see development, but it should not be development that is at the expense of the environment. It has to be green. It has to be to take care of terrestrial and aquatic flora and fauna. Chair, we have to see whether this relationship has led into having more integrated and prosperous Africa. The question is, has Africa been more prosperous because of its relationship with India, or has it been poorer? I'm sure it has been more prosperous, but we have to document it. You know, has it led to more peace in Africa? I understand, of course, India has been contributing a lot into world peace. I'm ending, Chair, now. We should ask ourselves again whether this relationship has contributed to Africa be more dynamic force in the international arena as exactly what we want. But also, lastly, we have to evaluate this relationship and see to what extent is this Indo-African partnership leading to the 7 aspirations of Agenda 2063. With this note, Chair, I beg to to submit here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Professor. I think you have captured the huge canvas of Agenda 2063 very well. And I think, Professor Goy, you have also captured the essentials that are needed in terms of we going forward on our partnership between India and Africa. And as you very rightly said that Chalo Africa is one dimension of the larger effort and the intent, but we need to bring in more gravitas to it. We need to bring in more substance to the efforts. But thanks for exposing us to the facets of the Agenda 2063. And you very rightly said that jobless growth has been sort of evident across most of the developing countries, most of the South. But we need a growth with sustainable development, and Africa-led development is the sort of emphasized point that time and again you brought in. In the trade context, your emphasis on we focusing on value addition part of it rather than export of raw materials alone, I think is extremely important. And I think if you look at the broad sort of action points that came up by the AU in terms of the 2014-2023, the first 10-year implementation plan for Agenda 2063, you identify the large sort of context, and all the 7 points that you have mentioned I think are very well captured in terms of this growing need for Africa that we want. And that I think whether it is the African Union Commission or NAPAD or AFDB or even I would say the UN agencies, so UNECA, the UN Economic Commission for Africa, they all want a sort of aspiration that is really reinvigorating the Africa Renaissance or the respect for democracy, human rights, the idea of secure Africa, prosperous Africa. And you also emphasized in terms of the people-driven development, something that Ambassador Mishra very rightly emphasized. And as Madam Excellency was explaining, the issue comes in when we are all aspiring for a better way of life. So I think it comes in with the questions that are of great significance. And Madam High Commissioner also mentioned about the issue of blue economy, the idea of vaccine development. So I think from that perspective, your presentation has added more heft to the issues that are there on table in terms of our partnership of 2063 and India's development cooperation. I would like to particularly pick up the last point on your slide, on your last slide, the first point, where you talked about impact assessment of India's development partnership. And I think this is an important issue that Professor Goy, you have raised. And I think what we have done here in India is to form a network of southern think tanks. We call it NEST, a network of southern think tanks. And we have been trying to discuss among these think tank members to address more from economic perspective what kind of assessment framework we can really bring in, and that can, I think, address the questions that are of great significance in terms of impact. So what kind of methodology we need, what kind of impact assessment we need of development partnership, what methodology we need. So as Madam High Commissioner very rightly mentioned, it is about the development in the framework of South-South cooperation. So how do we assess South-South development cooperation projects? Do we adopt methodologies which are developed by DFID or USAID or OSAID? or do we develop our own framework? And as an economist, I feel that there is a scope to develop assessment frameworks which are sensitive to the priorities of South-South cooperation. So what are the factors that can contribute in terms of a framework which is sensitive to the principles of South-South cooperation? South-South cooperation is very much about the horizontality. It is not about the hierarchical structure of the ODA. It is very much about mutual gain. It is very much about the localization of development, something that 2063 stands for. And I think it is important for us to see what kind of dimensions we can have in terms of such an assessment. Unfortunately, we are really running out of time and we do not have much. But just now, I have before me statistics to show how India's trade with Africa is not something which is uniform with all the countries, as you can imagine. It is not same with all, and what we have done at my institute, RIS, and if you have Madam Excellency sometime, please do visit our website. So on the RIS website, we have some papers on India-Africa trade, where we have captured the value addition part that Madam you mentioned and Dr. Prosper also mentioned, in terms of a rise in value-added products from some of the African countries. So I would say that instead of comparing India-Africa trade, if we compare India's trade with the 54 partner countries from Africa, you would see that in case of 23 countries, there is clear rise in imports on value-added products. And this, Madam Excellency, is important in terms of what kind of parts and components are coming in from Africa. And if you see the nature of those products that are coming in, over the years, I'm seeing it has expanded. And unfortunately, we are reaching it towards the end of the timing for this session. But we can get into more discussions and more ideas on the front of deciphering the trade at various levels in terms of value addition. We can also explore details of value chains that Dr. Prosper mentioned very rightly, and how on blue economy, on vaccine, we can deepen our cooperation and partnership. Just to conclude, I think the idea of impact assessment of development projects that Dr. Prosper has suggested is an excellent idea. And if Nivedita, any session recommendations you are compiling, I would very strongly suggest to include this idea of impact assessment, evolving methodologies for that, and we collectively working in that direction. As Madam High Commissioner, you would appreciate the idea of triangular partnership and we going forward is in a way also importing North-South assessment frameworks and South-South intellectual effort to strengthen cooperation frameworks. From that perspective, they are still required and they are still called for. So we would have more efforts in that direction, and we would work out more details from that. But I thank you, Madam High Commissioner, for your excellent remarks. Thanks a lot for this, and also to Professor Prosper Ones-Ngogoy for his excellent presentation. I'm sure ICWA would collate these interventions in form of a report of the session. Since there are no further questions I see in the chat box, I would bring this session to a close. Dr. Nivedita, do you have any points at this stage?
There were no questions in the chat box. But it was more for Akhilesh Mishra, and he has left. It's a question relating to online training. program
yeah.
under ITech and how our
Yeah.
hospitals, medical personnel. This is
No,
also a very
I
important
meant
issue.
for our Madam High Commissioner and for Professor Gowai. So that I don't see. So I think we can close this session now at this point. But thanks to ICWA, thanks to our panel, and of course, in absentia to the Additional Secretary, Development Partnership Administration, Ambassador Mishra, for his participation in the session. Thank you. And back to you.
Thank you, Chair, Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, for moderating the session. And thank you to all the panelists, Excellency Jacqueline Mukangira, Professor Prosper Honest, and Ambassador Akhilesh Mishra for their very insightful discussion. We would conclude for today, and we would have our session starting tomorrow at 2 p.m. Indian Standard Time. We request all of you and all the other audience to kindly join us tomorrow as well.